Hey folks, welcome back to the FaithSide. This is a podcast about faith and gaming by a couple of Christian nerds trying to live life together and while at the same time apart. That's kind of weird.
How you doing, Sam?
Hey man, I'm doing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, I'm doing. We're talking about the topic of forgiveness today, and just like normal, good old evil one, he loves to attack where you're going to be trying to make a stand. It's one of those kinds of places where you don't. I don't feel adequate to the call. I don't feel adequate to the task, but I still do strongly believe that doing this podcast with you is something that I'm supposed to be doing. On my channel, on the flip side, if you see a little heart thing there, that means I read it. That's not an automatic thing that happens whenever you post a comment. That means that I read it, I saw it, and I may not have responded to it because I can't respond to everything. I've got too much other things to do, but I can read. And so I was reading a comment the other day. It says, well, when are we going to get into some meat? And I'm like, that was kind of meaty. But sure. This is one of those times, I think episode 2, we're going to start getting into the meat. So if episode 1 wasn't meaty enough for you, I think episode 2 might start to scratch that itch.
And we have other comments. People were like, well, if you guys talk more about board games, I'd be more interested. There are a lot of people that listen to the whole thing, and it's really exciting to have people that care, that find that what we're trying to do is relevant to them. And the fact that you had a hard time today is just going to make it for a better episode, because we're literally the whole goal is to talk about our struggle and make it real, right? Other people struggle with forgiveness and a million. I'm sure this is the only time that we'll ever think to talk about forgiveness. And after we've covered the topic of forgiveness in this 1-hour podcast, we'll never talk about it again. We'll never have a need. But at least it's going to be cathartic to share what we've been going through.
Yes.
What have you been thinking about, Sam?
Well, you know what? I mean, of course, what I do, I'm thinking about board games a lot as well, but I also try to take time to think about other things. I'm a city group leader for my church. And what that basically just means is that it's a group of people that we usually don't have. Well, normally, right now we are, but normally we don't have midweek services. And so city groups take the place of that midweek service. And it's basically where a group of people are coming together. We have dinner together. We sit and chat, and we also talk about, we have the notes of the sermon that was just preached on Sunday, and we go through those notes and we talk about how what was preached impacted us, what from the scriptures impacted us, that kind of stuff. And we've been doing that for, almost, a good 6 months now. But now, after talking with the group a little bit, we've decided that we're going to do a Bible study through a book by A.W. Tozer. So we're going to be doing The Pursuit of God from A.W. Tozer, and there's a study guide in it. So I've been thinking a lot about this. As the leader of the group, the book has a whole lot of extra stuff, not just reading through the chapter and then doing the questions. There's other stuff that I'm supposed to be reading. So that's actually been a lot of what I've been thinking about here recently. And then I've been off and on reading through this Screw Tape Letters. And then I've also been off and on reading through this, the 1916 Project. I usually am the kind of person that I do not read fast. I am very much a slow reader, which makes reading rule books absolute crime and punishment for me, because it's just, I have to set the game up. I have to learn how to play it by playing it. Just reading the book is like, and I can't do that. So I'm curious. I think I'm a little bit too old to be diagnosed with it, but I'm curious if I might have a tinge of ADHD in me because I usually can't read just one book. I've got to pick up um, three different, which to me that seems counterintuitive because I know I need to focus, but sometimes I just don't want to. It's not that I can't. I just don't want to, and I want to
Yeah.
read something else because I feel myself getting bored, if I can say that, about what I'm reading, and I don't want it to be. I want to come back to it and have it be vibrant again. And so that's that's what I've been thinking. That's been occupying my mind a lot lately, on top of all of the other board game stuff, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that the style, like however your brain works, it's probably a good thing because you have played. At this point, is it appropriate to say tens of thousands of board games? Uh,
I
you know,
I didn't keep track, so I couldn't tell you, but it definitely feels like that. Because it's like you read a part of a rule book, and it's like you're trying to teach the game, and you tell them, yeah, you start with 5 cards. Oh wait, no, is it 5 cards or is it 3 cards? I can't remember. And so you have to go back to the rule book and read. And there's this, it all just starts bleeding together at that point.
yep.
And
Is that
JT
for
and I
this game or that
were
game?
what's that?
Is that for this game or that game?
Exactly. That's it. So it's like JT and I just finished up our top 100 with numbers 20 to 11 and then 10 to 1, which are both going to be on the channel later on this. Well, actually, they may have already come up by the time this goes up. But so as he describes games, I'm like, what other game uses that mechanism? And I can't, I know there's like 4 or 5 other ones at least that are almost exactly like that. And I found myself doing that the other day, yesterday when we recorded as well. It's just, there's so much and there's so much overlap between those different mechanisms and how they're implemented in the different games. It's keeping them all separate is a daunting task. And a lot of people do it much better than I do. And I respect them greatly for it, but not so much me. You said earlier, you said how my brain works. Often it doesn't feel like it works very well at all. It's just, it's just okay. Well, how is it going to crap out on me today? And how am I going to get back on track
Yeah.
afterwards? So
It's funny because I talked to we had a kind of a Bible study with my kids over the weekend, and one thing that came up was my wife said that we only use 10% of our brains.
right.
And we were talking about, imagine what it's like in heaven if we have a similar body to what we have now, but we just get to use 100% of our brains. It's not like what the way I decided was, if you get to use 10% of our brains, like with 10% of our brain at capacity for thought, we have sent rockets into space. We have planes that fly regularly, and that's a normal thing for us today. We've got all sorts of crazy things, AI.
Yep.
And imagine if we could use 100% of our brains. It wouldn't be like, you're 10 times more effective now. It would be to the 10th power more effective now.
Right.
So it's like 10 to the 10th power,
Yeah.
which would be roughly 10 billion times more effective as a single person. So one person using 100% of the capacity of their brain, if it's just an exponent instead of like a multiplication problem, would be more effective than all the people on the earth. That one person's brain's processing power would be more effective than everyone's put together.
I would just like maybe 15%.
Maybe 11%.
Just give me 11, 12%.
You'd be like you'd be a genius.
So that I can just get a little bit extra done. Yeah.
Yeah.
It literally kind of pushes you towards the idea of a creator, right? There has to be a designer, and it just pushes you to, Romans 1, we are without excuse because of the general revelation of God through nature, through the design that's found there. That can be a topic for a different podcast because
I love that stuff. I'll tell you what, I'm a huge fan of, I need to know how things work. And one of the things that I love is I love astronomy, love oceanography, and certain things that just blow my mind. I love astrophysics and learning about things like that. And one of the things, a lot of people, you look at for example, the, evolution. And people just say, oh, we have a bunch of missing links and that kind of thing. We know how it works. And it's like, man, you
Yeah.
have no idea how evolution works. And, the theory of evolution was like in the 70s, it was like over billions of years we evolved. And then scientists, all atheist scientists were like, that's too slow. It wouldn't work like that. So the current theory is that, you had these periods of slow evolution and then this period of like, it's like a blip on the heart monitor
Hmm.
of like, a brown bear makes a panda bear and, and then there you go. And somehow not only is there one panda bear, there has to be a male and a female. Those somehow have to grow up and survive. And they somehow have to have babies that then survive that perpetuate. So there's probably like a sudden all the brown bears in this era make all panda bears and then the brown bears take care of them and then the panda bears leave and become their own society now and that happens billions of times over the course of history, but it's just so it gets kind of ridiculous. But when you think about it, the ocean, we have studied the ocean for years. We only know like 5% of what's actually in the ocean. We only
Wow.
know 5%. There was a megalodon tooth, like one of those massive shark teeth that regularly they wash up on shore, and they are dated to less than 10,000 years old.
Wow.
And so, the Mariana Trench is deeper than Mount Everest is tall. So in the ocean, and there are creatures down there that we just cannot see.
Hmm.
And so, what I'm basically saying is that there are massive sea creatures that will kill you if you go to strange places. 95% chance that there's probably a massive sea creature. Like we found an octopus that had 40-foot long arms, like tentacles, and science determined that is a baby or a
I
squid. I'm
just
sorry,
I
not
just
like a
had
massive
I
squid.
just had the picture of an octopus with a 40-foot arm, not a
Yeah,
tentacle. That's
like
nightmare truth.
Trogdor,
Yeah,
like a beefy
exactly.
arm
Oh
at the
boy,
back of
look
his
at
neck.
that. Look at you.
So anyway, my mind is blown by creation,
Yeah,
and
it is.
there's a man who is an astrophysicist, is actually the father of quantum. I forget. Anyway, quantum something. I don't know why that it's escaping me right now.
Some
He
that
said
smart stuff.
yes. So
Yeah.
he said the first drink of quantum physics. There you go. Quantum physics will make you an atheist, but God is waiting for you at the bottom of the glass. Um,
Oh, I like that.
it's just it blows your mind. Like the things that you think you know a tiny little bit. In fact, there's an exercise that you can do. It's like you draw a big circle on a piece of paper, and you say, "This is all the knowledge in the world that's possible to learn. All the knowledge in the entire universe. How much of this do you know?" Just like make a mark in that circle that illustrates how much you know of everything there is that is possible to be
Hmm.
known. Most of the time, people actually just put a dot, like a little dot.
Yeah.
And I ask people like, you think God could be on the outside of that dot? Or it's
Yeah.
oftentimes it humbles you. You should be humbled by the fact that really science is all about the discovery of what is unknown. It's the pursuit of understanding. So like the law of gravity may work differently than we understand it. And what happens when we come to a place where the law of gravity fails to explain what's happening, we figure out, well, there must be a different equation that we didn't quite get right.
Yeah.
So let's adjust the equation.
Right. I was thinking while you were doing that explanation that I don't think that my pen has a fine enough point to correctly illustrate just how little I think I know compared to what is available for knowledge.
I'll twist the knife a little bit and say one last thing on that is,
Yeah, go ahead.
if God made everything, then no matter what you should be able to know God.
Yeah, because the knowledge of Him can be found everywhere. Um, and that's literally what I think Romans 1 is talking about. It's like even if you don't get to the part about Christ, you have enough knowledge, you have enough information given to you to know that whether you fight against it or not, you know that God exists. other parts of Scripture talk about how when you kind of surrender to that knowledge and you stop fighting against that, God brings the other knowledge in, and you begin to learn and grow towards Him in that way. And it's the whole idea. I've read this book once before, and I do remember basically by the end of the book, and I guess spoilers, but the book's like over 100 years old at this point, so get with it. Um, the end of the story basically is that in our pursuit of God, we begin to understand that it is not actually us that's pursuing Him; it's actually that He's pursuing us. That's a cool place to be in when you come to that realization.
The Bible, one thing that I'll say is the Bible does not try to justify the existence of God. In fact, it starts out with, in the beginning, God.
God, yeah.
So it's like, this is what they call an axiom, a self-evident truth, something that doesn't need explanation but explains itself. The fact that it is explanation enough that it's intrinsically understood, and we don't have to have it explained to us. So, the sun rises and that I should wake up and be active during the day is an axiom. It's a self-evident truth. And so I believe that God is a self-evident truth, and that perspective, it's really a matter of perspective, where some people like, hey man, I've tried to believe. I just don't. I've had people tell me that, and it's like, God is patient,
Mm-hmm.
and God is going to seek after those people.
He's also a gentleman.
Yeah.
He's not going to force himself upon anybody.
Right. So, it's just, if you're listening to this and you feel like that, just continue seeking. And I would even ask, if God was real, if God was the one on the throne that created everything, would you obey Him?
Yep.
A lot of the time I think that, maybe it comes down to people would rather be in the driver's seat. And there are people many that I even train with in jiu-jitsu that will say, I don't want to believe in God, because that I want to do the things I want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't want God to kind of be the boss of me and tell me what I can and can't do.
And that's one of the misperceptions that the evil one will throw at us, right? If I follow Christ, then that means I have to stop doing fun things, and I have to stop doing things that I already enjoy, and I have to stop this, and I have to stop that, and following Christ is a call to action. It's not a call to de-escalation.
If God is the author of all things, then God's the author of fun, entertainment, comedy,
He absolutely is.
All of those things. Like, your life should be better and more interesting and more fulfilled, right?
Exactly.
Versus less.
Yeah. The Bible tells us that we are to delight ourselves in the Lord. And if we do that, He will give us the desires of our hearts. Now, that doesn't mean that He's just going to give us whatever we want. It means that He through that process of growth, our desires will become more like His desires, and we will begin to enjoy doing what He enjoys and what He calls us to do. Our pastor has said, Christians need to be the most exciting people in the room. They need to be the most fun people at the party. Now,
your mileage may vary.
Not every party. Right? There's some guidelines. You know what I'm saying? But often the opposite is true. We're the sticks in the muds. We're the thou shalt and thou shalt nots, and we lean real heavily in the thou shalt nots. But that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. The freedom that Christ has given us is an open doorway to enjoying everything that God has given us to enjoy. But it also does mean that we have correct parameters within which we can enjoy those things. But
right. Just like a board game, like there's a rule book for a reason, right. And that means there are boundaries for a reason. Like when I'm developing Deliverance, I think about things like there are certain rules that people would rather behave this way. So one of the examples from the game, in the game, there is a well, actually, let's do a really simple rule. Positive status effects activate before negative. So that, there's a light, which is if you're standing on a space with light, you're going to heal 1 damage at the end of your turn. Then wither is if you are withered, it's like poison, you're going to take 1 damage at the end of your turn. So if you are at 1 HP and you're standing on light and you're withered, you're going to live, right? But a lot of the time, people are at like full health and they heal 1, which essentially means nothing because they're at full health already. Yeah. And then they take 1 damage because they're withered. It's like, well, I want to choose the order, right? And it's like, no, the game rules say this, and sometimes people deviate and do their own thing, but there's a reason that the game is the way it is, and that the rules are the way they are, because within that sandbox, there are a lot of other rules that ensure that there's not like I'll give you one more example. The first player token, when I decide, or our team cooperatively decides who plays first, play proceeds clockwise from that player. And so your one choice you make is, Sam, do you go first or do I go first? And then let's say it's you, me, and JT or whatever. And you go first. That means JT is going to go last. It used to be that we got to decide who goes next. So we would have these long conversations about, oh, I could do this if I optimize my turn perfectly. Then JT, you go next. And then you can optimize your turn perfectly. And then Andrew, you go last. And then we'll switch it up and be like, Andrew, go first. And then whatever. And that was so complicated. It was like, we have to do all the math before we decide what the right thing is. Now it's like, hey, I could knock that demon out before he punches you in the face. I'll take the token. And that's the only conversation you need. And that makes for a much better game because you're not in full control.
Yep.
And so in the same way, just because you perceive yourself in full control of everything doesn't make life better.
Often we have this perception of we are in control, and we are absolutely not in control. I've watched many videos about people who are talking to passersby on the streets, or if they're talking to a group of people that have come to talk with them about this kind of thing. And, the point is made, by one of the people in the audience. I want perfect knowledge. I want absolute proof that God exists. And the person asked, why? What part of your life do you always require absolute proof? Do you test the chairs before you sit into them every single time you sit into them? Do you test the water in every single place with a water testing kit before you take a drink of water? No, you don't. So this idea of requiring absolute proof is a misnomer, really, because we do not. It's
absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. We do not live our lives this way. We live our lives in faith in a number of different ways, and we just don't realize it because we don't call it faith. We just take it for that's life.
Right. Well, faith, a lot of people will apply faith in this with this definition of blind faith, where I'm just going to trust, but even though there's no evidence and that kind of thing, but the Bible expresses faith as the evidence of things unseen. So it actually uses the word evidence in the definition, in the way the Bible defines faith. It requires evidence. And so, anyway, that's a good conversation. I think we should dig into that, but we actually want to talk about forgiveness.
We do. Right? We do want to talk about forgiveness. I like starting with definitions. I always like starting with definitions. So, Blue Letter Bible, I'm just going to put a plug in here because I always do. Blue Letter Bible is one of my favorite websites and one of my favorite apps that I have on my phone because of the wealth, and I mean the absolute wealth of knowledge that is within this app and within this website. And it is free. They do ask you for a donation from time to time, and you can donate if you want to. If you choose not to donate, it doesn't affect your usage of the app or the website at all. blueletterbible.org is the website. You can also find it on the Apple thing or the Droid thing, whatever, Android thing, whatever those
Store.
marketplaces are called. Anyway, on there you can type in the word in the search engine. You can type in the word forgiveness, and it basically gives you 9 different dictionaries that you can study with without having any of those volumes. Let's go to Vine's Expository Dictionary of New Testament Words. Look at that title. Woo! All right. So it is forgive, forgave, and forgiveness. So these are the things. So the idea here is that it's a verb. So there is, with the English language, we know that forgiveness is an action. All right. This is something that you do. It is not some philosophical idea that you can just hopefully attain at some point in your life. This is something that you choose to do. All right. So that's the first point I want to make. Vine's Expository Dictionary says this: primarily, it means to send forth or to send away, and it means to remit, which is taking away, or forgiving. I love it when it uses its own word to
Yeah, a
define.
little circular.
I love that when dictionaries
Yeah.
do it. So there's a number of different ways that it's used in the Bible. It's talked about forgiveness of debts, so money that is owed. There is an idea of forgiveness within that within the Bible. There are also, of course, the remittance or the forgiveness of sins, and that's probably the larger um, part of the biblical references that is on there. Um, there is a human forgiveness, and it talks about how that is to be expressly analogous to divine forgiveness. In other words, we get our idea of forgiveness from the divine forgiveness that we can experience. And it also talks about that there's a possibility to have limits for forgiveness, to bestow a favor unconditionally. Then there is also the idea of a dismissal or a release of something that was owed. How's that for a definition that we can start from? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's good. I thought about, how would I personally define forgiveness? And for me, it's absolving someone of the responsibility to make you whole due to something that they did to you or they
Okay.
took from you,
Yeah.
and letting God repay instead.
Hmm.
So, and I will say forgiveness doesn't mean entirely forgetting what happened. It doesn't mean
Very good.
exposing yourself in the same way. If somebody stabbed you with a knife in the back, you probably would wisely not turn your back on that person,
Yeah.
even if you forgive them for
Right.
it, right? So that's important. It doesn't mean forget. I also think phrases like mercy, words like mercy and grace.
Hmm.
Mercy would be, it's almost like a pre-forgiveness in a way, where grace is giving you unmerited favor that you didn't deserve, and whereas mercy is withholding wrath or negative or consequences or wages
Hmm.
that you've earned, that that you do deserve some sort of negative consequence,
Yes.
withholding that from you,
Yep.
you receiving it.
Absolutely. Yeah, the
So
one of the things that I like to talk about first and foremost when we talk about maybe not first and foremost, but definitely early in the conversation, is the idea that forgiveness is an action that you must take, and it does not have to be, and it often shouldn't be a reaction to somebody's asking for forgiveness. One is not required for the other one to be expected of the
right.
Lord in our hearts. And this is a thing that I had to come to taking counseling a few years ago from my pastor back in Florida, where, I knew I needed to forgive this person. And I was asking my pastor, is this a conversation that I need to have with them? Do I need to come to them and say, look, I forgive you, even though you're not asking for forgiveness? And his counsel was, no, you do not need to do that. You do still need to forgive them. They do not have to ask for forgiveness, because often they're not going to. I would even say many times the person that has wronged you may not even know that they did. they're not on the same wavelength to understand how what they did and or said should give them the desire to apologize, and to ask for forgiveness. So forgiveness for me is something that I need to do in my heart that relieves me from carrying that baggage around.
Yeah, yeah. I believe that and let's also add in a couple of other situations. Maybe some people could be ignorant of maybe they cut you off on the freeway and they had no idea. um you know Maybe they're driving 100 miles an hour and cross 4 lanes and honk at you. Maybe they know exactly what they're doing and they don't care. There are people that are just that will hurt you and say, well, it didn't hurt me and I don't care about you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I only care about me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are psychopaths and sociopaths. And actual definitions, right? But which is like 5% of the population or something like that, less than 5%. Narcissistic, psychopathic, sociopathic, that people have real issues, a lack of empathy. Also, maybe there are people that are not crazy, not don't have some sort of disorder going on in their brain or whatever in their heart, that may be too prideful to ask for forgiveness or to be willing to admit they did something wrong to you. And so those types of things are, or maybe they know they did something wrong, but they're just hoping to, like an ostrich buries its head in a hole when a lion is around. They're just hoping that they can do that and bury it and that it will just not come up again.
I do want to mention one thing in passing, and that is because you mentioned it. I do think that there are limits to empathy. And I think that empathy is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I think we do need to empathize with people, but it does need to have borders, parameters, because I think you can give empathy too much, and that becomes unhealthy for the relationship. So that might
it
be
would
something we
impact
can come back to.
Yeah, I think empathy can impact your ability to forgive.
Yes.
If you have too much empathy for one person and not another, then
it can impact your ability to
or to see a situation clearly, maybe, or
not just see it. Well, yes, but it's you want to empathize, absolutely, but there is a point at which that empathy should not go any further, because at that point you're affirming or you're allowing the sin to continue in their life if it's in that kind of situation.
Right? That would be the difference. I guess one way to put it is the difference between being nice and being kind. Sometimes it's kind not to be nice.
Yes.
I just did a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament this weekend, and
How
somebody
many times
snapped my
were you
knee.
nice, Andrew, during that tournament?
No, not. So the thing is, I wasn't very nice. I tried to whoop everyone's butt.
Exactly, right?
And it was violent. I'm an expert division in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I have a duty, in my view, and all other competitors that are with me, to be kind is to give it my best effort.
Yeah.
And if that means that I'm holding a submission and you are not tapping out, then something might break, or you are going to go to sleep and wake up on the ground thinking you won. And so it's kind of a very niche of a niche, and it's board game related because it's human chess. Really, we're playing chess, but the human is the chessboard. And so
That sounds gross.
Yeah, it is. So sweaty dudes, sometimes in pajamas, you know. But so the idea is that in order to be kind, I have to give it my all, because if somebody beats me because I was taking it easy on them, it never feels good. It's like very patronizing, and so I have to give it my very best. And if I beat someone else because they felt bad for me, it just doesn't feel good. It's like you didn't give me your best. It just so yes,
it's a lack of honor
agree.
too. It's a lack of honor too.
So I ended up taking a silver medal in my division. There were 4 other competitors plus me, 5 total, and I ended up making it into the finals. And then I actually snapped my knee against one of my against the finals dude who's a professional, and it's a grade 1 injury to my LCL in my knee,
Mm.
which is actually okay. It's kind of a freak accident. I've done this counter about 1,000 times or 10,000 times, and I was just a little too slow, and
Yeah.
he was a little too fast,
Gotcha.
and you know, he got me. It
Which
made a
is the
big noise,
difference,
and
right? It makes
yeah.
the difference. Yep.
But man, that guy felt so bad, and he was immediately like very apologetic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey man, you know, thanks for giving it your all.
Yeah.
And you know, I stood up and I'm like, oh, well, let's test the knee, see what it's like in 5 minutes. I've got the absolute division next, which is big boys, all skill levels, all age levels. And you know, we became friends, and you know, we had a good time. And then it came time to do the next division. This is a little tangent, but came time to do the next division, and my team were like, they were watching me. They were like, "Hey man, is your knee okay?" And I'm like, truthfully, I don't think it's okay, but I'm gonna compete anyway. And I hobbled over to the next mat. And my first match, I'm 190 pounds. I weighed in at like 188.2. And my first match was against somebody that was 250 pounds, and real big, beefy dude. And I beat him. I lost my ability to, you know, one of my primary skill sets is like wrestling, like stand up takedowns. I throw people and whatever. And he threw me onto my back. And at about 3 minutes in, 3.5 minutes in, like halfway through the match, I'm still thinking like, I don't know how I'm gonna beat this guy. This guy's massive and strong, and like I'm trying to do my best, you know. End up flipping him over. What my mind was exploded that I was able to actually sweep him, and I scored 2 points. I'm still behind by one. It bring us back to the center of the mat. I end up passing his guard and mounting him, which was amazing. Guys like 6 inch taller than me and 60 pounds heavier than me,
Mm.
and I managed to beat him with
Wow.
a wrecked knee.
Wow.
And I thought that was so cool. Just it was a very God thing. In a way, I felt like God actually after the match, after you know I left and got home, you know my daughter recorded all my matches. I looked at the way that the guy was holding my leg when my knee popped, and he did not have a grip that would be conducive to hurting my knee.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt in that moment, seeing what happened, that it was kind of like Jacob was
Mm.
his hip was touched by the angel of the Lord,
Yeah.
and it came out of joint.
Yeah.
That's what I think happened. And so I ended up later competing against another 250-pound monster who was a professional. That like this is all he does. You know, I ended up losing to him. He was I lost to both of my losses were to the tournament winners. I took
Mm.
actually I have the silver medal right here.
What?
You know, so I took a
The
silver medal,
bling.
you know. So
Awesome.
it was pretty cool. But yeah, so it was a good time.
That's
And I
cool.
forgave all my opponents, and they forgave me for the mean things that we did to each other, and we have a great time, you know. It was awesome.
Well, you know, it's funny because when we were on Monday mornings, I go to a Bible study at the church at the ungodly hour of 5:30 in the morning. And I say that because I'm not a morning person. If you like getting up in the morning, fine and dandy, knock yourself out. I don't, but I make myself do this because I want to be plugged in. And so we've been reading through the book of Genesis, and we hit Genesis 33 this week. And if you look at Genesis 33, it is actually the chapter where Jacob comes back and meets his brother Esau. Now, if you know the story, Jacob and Esau did not leave on very good terms at all because Jacob actually
He
deceived
poached
Esau
Esau's blessing. Yep.
along with the help of his mom to for Esau to give for him to receive Esau's birthright, his inheritance from their dad. And so after this, Esau is pissed, and Jacob's like, "All right, I'm out." And so he goes into another land, meets this guy named Laban, marries one of his daughters. Laban actually deceives him, and because he marries off his oldest daughter, not the younger one that Jacob had the hots for. And so Jacob has to work like I think it's like close to 20 years all
It's like
together
7 years
Laban.
per woman.
Yeah,
Getting
7 years
married.
per woman, right? And so So now he's kind of done with Laban, because Laban was kind of a jerk, and he's just not treating him very well. So he's like, okay, I'm out. I'm going back to the land where I came from. And so he's on his way back, and he gets reports from his people that, hey, Esau's on his way, and he's got 400 guys with him. And so Jacob's like, well, crap. And he starts, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to send a bunch of, different kinds of herds. We're going to send a procession of these different things ahead of us. And
as a gift, right?
We want you to tell him these are from our master Jacob. They are for you. And so maybe if I do that when we actually meet, he won't kill me. That's basically what Jacob's thought process is. And so this happens, and he comes up with a couple of other different plans where he's going to have, his family go this way, and these other group of people go this way, so that if Esau comes and kills me, then at least these other people will be able to get away. Comes up with a whole lot of devices. But Genesis 33 is where Jacob and Esau actually meet. And you know what? As many times as I've heard this story, I never really kind of focused upon the act of forgiveness that is in here. And so in verse 4, it says, and Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children and said, who are those with thee? And he said, the children of which God hath graciously given thy servant. And then down in verse 8, Esau says, oh, what do you mean by all of these things that you are that I've already met before I came up to you? And Jacob says, these are to find grace in the sight of my Lord, lowercase l, meaning that he's being subservient to his brother Esau. And Esau says, I have enough, my brother. Keep that thou hast unto thyself. And I was like, whoa. And one of the things that our Bible study leader does is he comes up with a bunch of different questions that we are, to kind of spark conversation during the Bible study. And, question number 2 says, what does verse 4 reveal about the possibility and power of forgiveness? Then the next question is, how does the reunion point to greater reconciliation in Christ? And then it gives some other verses, Romans 5:10, Ephesians 4:32, Colossians 3:13. You can go and look all those up. But then it also talks about Luke 15:20, where it's the parable of the prodigal son. And it's almost a carbon copy of what the father does in the story of that prodigal son, where he saw him afar off, he ran to meet him, he threw his arms around him, and he kissed him, because his son who was lost had now been found. And it's just this idea of, man, I never thought that Esau, of all people, would be a picture of forgiveness in the Old Testament. But sure enough, here it is. And I think it further goes to that idea of forgiveness is something that happens on the inside, whether or not the person you are forgiving has asked for the forgiveness. Right. And I just wanted to share that with everybody, because it staggered me. It made me take a step back.
It's beautiful. My mom told me something when I was a kid that I held on to, and I've heard it in different forms since. It's like, when you hold on to resentment, and there are people that have been legitimately wounded by others that are listening to this podcast right now.
Absolutely.
In a litany of manner, and degrees of severity. And any time that you talk about something, that you bring it up in the past, something that happened a long time ago, where it causes emotion in you, and it just emotion comes out when you express it, and you're like, it still makes me mad right now. That means you're not quite over it, right? And that would kind of reveal a lack of true forgiveness in your heart for that situation, that person. But when you hold on to resentment, the truth is that it makes you a miserable person. What my mom told me was, It's like swallowing poison, expecting the other person to die. And when you forgive, what you're doing is you're freeing yourself from holding that person accountable to pay you back. And you say, instead of you making it right, God will repay. God will repay us both. Will repay me. Maybe God will lead that person to repentance. Maybe God, gives that person a ticket. Maybe they get a ticket when driving a little too fast, or I don't know. But shoot, I am absolved of the responsibility to collect on a debt you owe me, and I absolve you of a debt that was hanging on me. It's like this thing that's like a noose around my neck, and I'm just simply taking it off and saying, you're not responsible for making me whole again. I will let God be the one responsible.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to be.
It absolutely is.
It's very hard to forgive someone, but there are some cases where, like one that I remember in particular, where I offended someone on social media. Never happens, but this happened like 4 years ago during COVID. It was the whole, you shouldn't go out in public because you could kill my grandma. And it was like, this guy was literally saying that. And this is an oversimplification. And I certainly don't mean to be, rude in the way that I portray this, but I sent him a message, and I was just kind of like, it was absurd to me that they would say, hey, you can't go outside even though you're well, because you can't go to a public place because you might spread COVID to me, which would cause me to spread it to my grandma. It's like, man, you should be the one not going out then. Like, don't put the responsibility for your family onto a total stranger.
Right.
So he was upset about that. And, anytime you take a strong stance on anything, people will be upset. Like, it's not like I was sorry for what I said. It was more that I was sorry for how I said it.
Yeah.
Not the content necessarily, but maybe I could have been much more eloquent in the way that I said it.
Sure.
Instead of lightly trolling. And so I apologized. I sent a private message and I apologized. Say, hey, I didn't mean to offend you, and I apologize for my words. And his response was, I don't forgive you. And I'm very upset about this still, and blah, blah, blah. So one thing that I want to share with others is, like, forgiveness. Sometimes, an apology is met with a lack of forgiveness, but it's not your responsibility to pay penance for someone's, unless it's a crime, in which you will pay penance by the law, right? It's not your responsibility to pay that person's, whatever their definition of penance is, to absolve you of your guilt.
Well, that actually leads us into, I wasn't planning on, we are running short on time, and we do want to talk about some board games, but
yeah,
I wasn't planning, and that's why I was kind of just mentioning these verses. But since you talked about that, Colossians 3, starting in verse 12, actually says, therefore, as God's chosen ones, holy and dearly beloved, put on compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving one another if anyone has a grievance against another. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you are also to forgive. Talking about that, the idea of forgiveness being an analogous to divine forgiveness. That's one of the things it's talking about here. Above all, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity, and let the peace of Christ, to which you were also called in one body, rule your hearts, and be thankful. And let the word of Christ dwell richly among you in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another through psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of our Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. So it really kind of speaks to that thing. I think at some point we are going to have to also talk about love, because when you use that word in today's society, I don't think it means what the Bible says it means. If I can borrow like from that phrase from the Princess Bride. Yeah.
Inconceivable.
You keep on using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. So it's the idea here is that we're going to have to talk about love, because it's definitely used here, and it's definitely scripture, and it definitely says, above all, put on love. But what does love mean? Well, we'll get to that in another episode. But for right now, I think it's clear that forgiveness is something that needs to be part of the Christian life. It needs to be part of our relationships with other people, whether they are within the church or without the church. Because, again, it's that the analogous nature between human forgiveness and divine forgiveness. We get our marching orders from how God forgave us. And so if God forgave us because of all people, he was the one who had the justifiable right not to forgive us, and he still chose to do that out of love. How much more should we do the same thing for those that are around us?
Right. The Bible says, he who has been forgiven much will love much.
Mhm.
And he who has been forgiven little will love little. In it's making a comparison.
Right.
There's maybe one last thing, and we can jump topic to board games, which is there's a parable that Jesus gives of a king and a man that owed that king 10,000. Well, I'll modernize it a little bit. $10,000. So somebody owed $10,000 to this king, which is way more than they could pay, a debt, way more than they could pay. And the king is like, you know what? I forgive you of that debt. Go home. Don't worry about it. You've been absolved of that debt. You do not have to pay me the interest or the principal. I understand you're in a hard financial position and you won't be able to do that. So let me just take this off your back, this huge burden off your back. The guy's really appreciative, of course.
Yeah.
Says thank you. And then he goes home, and a friend owes him $50, and he just lifts that guy up by his shirt and is like, you better pay me back that money. And he does not let his friend off the hook. And then the king hears about what that guy does. That king throws the man in prison and says, you are working off every penny of this $10,000 that you owe me until you pay the last cent. And that is, the Bible uses that as an example of if you don't forgive others, you will not be forgiven. So the concept is you will be forgiven in the same way that you forgive others.
Yes.
And so if you've been forgiven of a massive debt, pass it, pay it forward.
Yeah.
So just my final thought on that.
Absolutely. That's great. Let us know in the comments what you think, because whether you agree or disagree with us, we want to hear what you have to say, and because having people agree with you is good. It's a blessing. Having people disagree with you, it's also good, as long as it's done in an agreeable manner. Yeah, I mean, come on, let's be kind. We can disagree to one another. Agreeably. We just read how that we need to be kind to one another. If you disagree, absolutely, let me know, but be kind. If you disagree with other people in the comments, be kind. Yeah, and if you have something else to add, I think that that'd be really cool. There are a lot of people way smarter than us that are listening to this, and we already kind of alluded to this. We have not arrived. We are very much still working through a lot of this stuff. I think I can safely speak for Andrew here. We both feel a little inadequate here. We're not gurus. That's not the point of this at all. So yes, absolutely. If you have more to add. Now, about board games. I'm playing a game today on my channel called The Flip Side that is called Night Soil. Have you heard of this one? No. Okay. So if you don't know anything about me, my humor, my level of humor is pretty sophomoric. I think farts are funny. I think poop is funny. I think games about poop are funny. One of my favorite games is Pecunia Non Ole, and that is a game where you are basically, it means money doesn't stink, and you are in the Roman times, and you're basically, you have an outhouse that you are operating for the people's use, and the more people you get to come and drop a deuce in your outhouse, the better, because that's amazing. It's points. Anyway, it's a poop game. And Night Soil, I've been invited to be on a podcast at the end of the month, and this is the game that they wanted to talk about. So they were kind enough to send me a copy of it so that I could play it and be able to talk with them about it. And I've never heard of this game before. Looked it up. It's another poop game. So you're basically, it takes place in Tudor England or London. And this is before they came up with their new revolutionary. We've actually watched, my wife and I have watched documentaries about the sewage systems in Europe that started way back in these ages. But anyway, before all of that happened, people were tasked with the very sought after job, I would imagine, of taking human waste out of the city and dumping it into the River Thames. And that's what this game is about. And you are basically trying to clean up the city of London and have it not start the Black Plague. That's basically what you're doing. And it's fairly interesting. My wife and I played a 2-player game of it last night so that I could learn how to play it. A couple of buddies of mine are coming over this afternoon, and we're going to play a 3-player game of it today on the channel. And oh my goodness, it's just one of those things where it's not overtly like trying to be humorous, but it's super funny because
That's awesome.
You're literally on the nighttime phase. You're literally moving poop around London, like trying to get it into the River Thames. It is so incredibly. I'm a moron. I get it, but it is so funny, and I'm really actually enjoying it. It's a fun game with a really wacky theme on it, but I really enjoy it. So that's the board game I'm kind of playing right now. It's called Night Soil. It's an interesting
funny
little game.
Yeah, well, for me, I was talking to you before we started this podcast, and I was like, we should really have an episode that features the types of games you like and the types of games I like, because that sounds like a really fun one to play. But man, tell you what, I'm all about games that are just like loaded with story, that give me a campaign that take 2 to 4 hours to play. Maybe like Twilight Imperium, I'll play 8 hours or whatever. Yeah. I'm all about stuff like that,
Yeah.
And what I've been doing now, my brain is so on Deliverance right now, which is what I want to talk about, because so I'm about a month or two from actually manufacturing this, and right now I'm finalizing the expansion's story. And the what we did with the Deliverance expansion is, so the campaign is a series of 14 connected missions in the base game that tell a story. We actually remastered that so that it would be a bigger story that has more involvement with, so you play angels, you protect saints, and battle the forces of darkness and whatnot. It's really a fun game. But the expansion has a campaign that is that will shift based on your choices. So you might play certain missions and not others, or you might have certain bonuses or penalties. You might find a secret here or there. And the story is, I want to say, probably 5 times the amount of story text in that is in the base game. Like, we have full on, like, people really requested that, like, I want to see humanity mixing somehow with angels and how angels interact with humans and whatnot. And this is a biblically based game, so it can't just be like, I'm Michael the Archangel, I'm here to clean up your poop, it's like, I'm this harmless vagabond that found this church, and so anyway, it's been a very interesting thing. I have to write lines for the devil, I have to write lines for Michael the Archangel. Man. There are a lot of the devil is actually a character you like, which is weirdly enough how I think it is in real life. I've read the Screw Tape letters.
Okay, I'm just saying, there's probably a lot of source material right here.
Yeah. Highly
Don't plagiarize, though. Don't plagiarize.
Nope. But the little twist in the Screw Tape letters is good. But man, I have really gone into the depths. And one of the important things about Deliverance is that I made it originally for Christians, because if you're a Christian, you're already kind of on the team. You don't need to, you're playing Michael the Archangel. The Bible is kind of the sandbox that we're playing in as far as the universe, So angels are good, demons are bad, Satan's the worst. That you just have to accept it if you're going to play, right? So there's no like twist, like, player, now you have to repent and get baptized if you want to skip past mission 6. There's and people really actually like that. And so there's this something we're building toward in the expansion that started in the base game that I'm really excited about. But to have the freedom to write all of this is really, like, the room to write and to actually fully express the story has been such a wonderful thing. But also probably the most challenging thing of my entire life
Yeah.
that I've done up to this point, and most demanding thing.
Hmm.
So that's what I've been working on. I wanted to show here. Let me see.
Yeah.
So for those watching, this is actually the box cover of the Deliverance board game, or rather, the Council of the Fallen expansion. Rather, it was the old one. So this is finished. Uh, check the actual final version out. It's the first time I've ever shown this.
Uh-oh. Dang.
Yeah,
That's
so,
cool.
yeah. So look at like before,
Hmm.
after.
Yeah.
It's like the
That's-
amount of detail in this, you could
It's
get lost in this thing.
it's crazy. Yeah. I mean, just the shading of the wings,
Yeah,
the different, like the glow
yeah,
that the angels have. That's really cool.
yeah. So it's something that my artist has been working on for a really long time, and I was really excited to finally see it. But you can just, I feel like you could just, there are things to look at in
Well,
the
yeah.
cover now that there weren't before. Like
Yeah.
in the middle right, there's something going on back there.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, it's been a
But you
real,
can actually see the town. That's cool.
yeah.
The little church steeple. That's
Yep.
sweet.
Yes, so there's a lot going on in there, and so we really leveled up the expansions artwork. We have same guy Dan Maynard who did all the art for the first game, all the art for the second game, and Johan Boysonet who did our map tiles for the first one and also the second one. He did like Elder Scrolls: Betrayal of the Second Era, Lord of the
Mm,
Rings: Journeys of Middle Earth, a lot of
mm.
other games like that. Deliverance is his capstone game, of
That's
course.
cool.
Um,
Yes, of course.
yeah, but to be able to work on this, it's been really, really fun.
Mhm.
And in the story, the craziest part is the story. When I'm developing the story, I have to mix the story with the actual mission.
Mhm.
So there's the before text, and then the mission, and then the after text. It's like how you get there.
Mhm.
Then the mission is what's actually happening, and you can't just be like, bad guys show up, lift your shields, go fight, and you whoop a bunch of demons in the supermarket now, and then afterward it's like, oh no, demons are in the bar, so you run over and go fight. It just, obviously the story just feels disconnected, disjointed. Might as well make it zombies and pirates at that point.
Sure, exactly.
But so to actually give a real, like, why you're there, so we have a before text, the mission itself, the after text, and then we have what we call an interlude, which is an optional text that we should probably do like foreteller audio narration for that.
Mm.
But eventually we may do that. But it's like how to push the story forward, how to have multiple characters that you care about that
Mhm.
that are doing things that mean, or that is kind of coming to a head. It's very fun, and the missions themselves have actually been adapted a little bit based on the, we of course we did the whole story. We mixed all the missions in. We did story beats and then mixed the missions in, and then we're like, we go here, we do this, then this is the mission, then we go here and do that, and this is the mission, and here's why we went here and there. So we've done so much work to get there, but it's so cool to actually adjust a mission based on what the story is. It's like, oh, the way I express what's happening in the before text, I need to have the mission done, because if you're fighting this giant mud monster, then the way that I describe how that mud is seeping toward the saint is going to be much different than if you were, if it was generic. It'd be like, the shadows are moving strangely, and
Right.
bad guys. It's just a very shallow way of expressing.
Yeah.
But when you have the mission, then you can write the before text. But then the before text might actually customize what you do during that mission.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so anyway, that's what I've been really focused on. And
That's cool stuff.
yeah, so I have a lot of other things I'd like to do, but shoot, between the tournament and then this last week, that was, I had spent about 40 hours writing in the last week.
Man alive.
So.
That's amazing though. That's a cool peek behind the curtain there for Deliverance and Council of the Fallen. Yeah, I still have the prototype box over here. I have not done anything
awesome.
with it, so I am eagerly awaiting my backing of that Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So very much looking forward to it. All right. Well, that is about that. We have spent a good amount of time talking about forgiveness. We've also talked about some games that we're playing right now, and that's about the long and the short of it. You're going to get a call to action once again. Let us know in the comments what you think. What's your take on all of the different things that we've talked about? And if you're here on the flip side, give us a like, subscribe, hit that bell icon so we can let you know when we have more content coming out. I produce a lot of different type of board game content. Usually it's a lot of live stuff. We also have some reviews in there that my wife and I do together, and I do some that are solo as well. And it's just a good time. So we keep it family friendly. We keep it clean. So you can listen with confidence that we're not going to say something unless it's talking about poops and farts. You may hear more of that. But anyway, I want to thank Andrew for being here and appreciate his time. He is not unlike a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs most of the time. So we do appreciate that.
As of the recording of this episode, we're only live on the FlipSide YouTube channel, but we're working toward getting our episodes into, Apple and Spotify and everywhere you listen to your podcasts. So it's coming. We're maybe even by the time this podcast goes live, we can be there. So,
all right. So. Yep. That'll, and we'll let you know. We'll try to blast it out as much as we can on the different social medias that we're a part of. So thank you for being here, though. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We hope you have a blessed day. We'll see you guys and gals later on the Faith Side.